All right,
Awesome.
welcome to a Witchpolice quick hit. I like to call these micro interviews because they're quick 10-minute conversations with local artists who are either new to me or new to the music community in the city. And it's just kind of a good way to introduce what they're doing to the listeners of the show and to myself, because I always like to find out about new bands as well. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about your project, because I have some questions, but I'd like to hear you sort of describe it first.
Yeah, so my project is called Gladly. My name is Glenn Radley. The name of the band is a portmanteau of my name, which I think is pretty fun. I like language things like that. Portmanteaus, spoonerisms,
Yeah.
those kind of language devices really make me happy. But the project itself is a six-piece band of multi-instrumentalists who all of themselves are songwriters, and we're kind of at a cross-section of like grunge and pop between like Courtney Barnett and Father John Misty and Harry
Okay.
Nilsson, I would say.
Okay. Well, I was looking at the some of your stuff on social media, and it seems like everyone who's in the band is already someone who's like made an impact locally on the music scene in all kinds of different genres. So how did you put this group together? Like, where did you get all these great musicians from?
Well, Jay is my best friend from music school. He started the same year, the same program in the jazz program at the U of M. I was doing jazz drums and he was doing jazz voice.
Oh, cool.
Shanoa, I also met in that program. She's a guitarist, singer, arranger kind of thing, and they both have their own projects. And Erica Einerson is both the percussionist in Apollo Suns as well as I believe niece of my first drum teacher, James Einerson, which is kind of an interesting kind of connection.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then Bryn Herperger is the bass player for Apollo Suns, but he's playing lead guitar and singing in the band. Tim Iskierski is like one of the most working sound people in the city and has
Yeah,
played
sure.
with Lanakai and a bunch of other bands. And I've just known them either personally, professionally, or just through hanging out.
What's your background in the local scene? Like, I know this is a brand new project, but what would people recognize you from before this?
A few things. I think post music degree, I immediately joined a folk rock band called Sebastian Owl.
Okay.
I
Yeah, yeah.
played drums on three of their albums and toured in Western Canada with them. I also, yeah, I'm the drummer. I'm the current drummer for Apollo Suns, and I've played with Hearing Trees. I've toured coast to coast with. I've recorded for and toured with Mr. K, who used to be Kevin
Yeah,
Roy.
yeah, I know him.
Um, and I've hosted for 13 months a open mic at the Times Changed High and Lonesome Club with two co-hosts every time, kind of round robin format set. So, and I've also, done musical theater. I've co-written a play called Life's Lyrics with Jay Buchanan from the band. I co-starred with him and his wife in a regional musical called J.D. MacArthur and the Winnipeg River Princess, which was an anti-capitalist screed written
Okay.
by Sheldon Svensson of the Fire and Water Music Festival and scored by Jesse Krause of Flying Fox and the Hunter-Gatherers, which is a bit of a throwback. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that a bunch of stuff. I like singing and playing the drums and writing songs and just producing. The producers I've worked with on this project are Rusty Mattias from The Waking Eyes and Imaginary Cities, and the Sheepdogs and the Weaker Hands,
Yeah.
and as well as Rusty Robot Project recently, which I believe you interviewed him
I did.
for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean,
So
that's a pretty extensive resume of stuff that you've been involved with, and it's all fairly different as well. So what is the why the sound that you have now with this project? Like, what made you settle on that? Because you've obviously had experience, with jazz related things, with more folk related things, with rock, with this, with that. Why the sound for this Gladly project?
there's a couple of answers for that. Answer number one is I got my first guitar a couple of years ago from Natalia Polischuk. Do you know her?
I don't think so.
She's like a folk songwriter and leather worker, and
Oh,
she's a
cool.
really, really great musician. And I played on some recordings for her, and she, in return, gave me an acoustic guitar. So that has totally informed the last couple of years of my writing. And for the first 5 years of being a songwriter, I exclusively wrote on piano. And for the last two, I've exclusively written on guitar. So that's been a huge shift in sound as well. But aesthetically, I feel like the most impactful person sonically on what I'm trying to do in terms of like guitar tone or like arrangement or like balance of like pop rigidity with chaos, like
Yeah.
that kind of aesthetic kind of thing, is mainly Courtney Barnett. And also I teach at School of Rock, and I'm currently teaching a grunge season to like a bunch of, you know, edgy teenagers. So
That's awesome.
that's also been an influence too,
Yeah,
like
no
just
doubt.
by
Yeah.
osmosis.
Well, this is maybe a bit of a departure from talking about your band, but I'm curious about that. How do these teenagers take grunge? Like, what is their impression of it? Because they're sort of detached from the initial sort of time period. I mean, you know, I was their age when it was happening, right? Like, I can't imagine how they're perceiving it from, you know, 30 years of history, you know, and having to go through all that. Well, what is their take on it?
Well, generationally, I kind of am in the middle between them and you then, because I was born in '93, so I wasn't like a teenager. I was like just like a, you know, developing little brain stem or whatever. But I think that like this is kind of brings up an interesting discussion about the interrelatedness and kind of like pan-temporal kind of weird postmodern era we're in aesthetically, where like you can just like as a lark just be into a decade for a while and just kind of like subscribe to that aesthetic. And I feel like within the demographic of teenagers, every flavor of every decade is just something they might get into. That's just like kind of a thing they might kind of inhabit for a while and relate to. So I think that with the documentation of the internet, it kind of creates this thing where like there are still goth kids. You know, that's a pretty old movement, you know, aesthetically. But like we're kind of like disjointed from occupying a current moment because it's becoming so interrelated. That's kind of how I feel about it. So there's a demographic of kids who want to play loud guitars and, you know, hit drums and stuff. So it's just like I'm dealing with the subset of kids that have always and still exist in that realm.
Sure. And I guess the context isn't as important as it used to be because everything is available all at once now, right? Does that kind of thing help you as far as sort of getting yourselves out there with this new project? The fact that, you know, there isn't really one sound that everyone gravitates towards in Winnipeg or wider, and it's kind of like everything is a mixed bag, and you can sort of pick and choose. Does that help you as a new band to sort of make your place in that you're not stuck trying to be with this genre?
Oh, okay. So I think that like my thing is that I really admire. Okay, so there's a couple layers to that. On the creative side, I feel like I really admire bands who can do like their take on a Beatles song or their take on a Nirvana song or their take on whatever, while like being idiomatic but not being outright larceny or whatever or stealing from the song. I really enjoy bands that are able to do that. Like Queen like would do like a version of a vaudeville song and then like a really lo-fi shitty aggressive rock and roll song immediately after it on an album or something. So I'm really into that, and I feel like as far as the internet has concerned informing that, I think technology itself has kind of created a feedback loop where I think that the way I would kind of contextualize it is I recently bought a MacBook with the new M1 chip. It's what I'm communicating to you on now. And it is strong enough that I can like have Logic on it and do any fake guitar tone I want infinitely forever. And that's like a weird kind of place to be as like a person who grew up before that. But I'm now in a place where I can kind of just like take from different genres sound palette wise with no actual cost. It's been democratized tone wise. Yeah, there's a barrier to entry to buying a laptop that's expensive and can do that, but it's a lot less than it used to be. So I'm kind of in a space where I'm just trying to try a genre for this song. Like I have stuff that's like acoustic kind of bluegrass, like my reductionist version of that. I have tunes that are more like abrasive and aggressive. I have stuff that's more like neoclassical or like a Baroque pop like Patrick Watson. I've been all over the place, and it's only recently that I've kind of honed in on writing aggressively dumb songs with really repetitive choruses that I'm really into.
Well, there's definitely a time and place for that, for sure.
Yeah.
What's the best way for people to hear you now? I mean, I know that, you know, we're recording this now. I know you have a show coming up. Probably by the time this comes out, that'll already have been, you know, a few weeks past. But what's sort of the best option if someone wants to track you down and see what you're doing as far as recording or playing future shows?
Definitely follow me at Gladly Music, or on Facebook. But this is my first go around, and I thought naively, I could just release a song with like 3 weeks of lead time and it's going to be totally easy, but it's not the way that it works on the internet. Actually, you need more lead time. So I'm going to probably release a single for the second show, which will be on streaming platforms. Right now, it's more of like an anarchistic kind of like, I'm going to post the entire set list of the current like recordings of these songs in the event page, and then you're going to see it there kind of thing. But I'm also completely anarchistic about just sending people current recordings. If you ask me, I'll send you really good recordings. And that kind of, to go back to another topic though, the other producer I've mainly worked with over the years is Micah Ehrenberg. He's kind of recorded me for a long time doing solo stuff. Like the first session I did with him, it was in the chapel at the U of W on like 100-year-old clunky piano, and we just did some stuff there. Like that was many years ago now, but he invited me up to do a session this summer. It was very generous of him, and we just kind of recorded a song to tape over 12 hours and just did all of the parts. He and I did the drums and the rhythm guitar and the lead vocal. He did the bass, harmony, and lead guitars. Okay. And it's called Bartholomew the Silver Beetle. It's about my partner's Volkswagen Silver Beetle anthropomorphized as a really skitty punk person. Okay. And then that'll probably be the first one that'll come out. Yeah.
Very cool.